freedom campaigner and activist Montgomery Toms was arrested on Saturday in London at a Pride stroke trans march event where he was holding up a placard saying that with the trans flag on, saying that the trans flag equaled mental illness. He used the word mental illness on the placard. He was arrested and detained for 10 or 11 hours in London on Saturday. Utterly scandalous. We're in a very dark time now. This should not have happened. I met Montgomery Toms a couple of times at the Sounds Beautiful Festival near Wimborne last weekend. Now, what I would like to say, this shouldn't have happened. We are in a very bad situation when it comes to freedom of speech at the moment and civil liberties. It's surreal. It's crazy what's going on. But my feedback to Montgomery Toms, although I agree he shouldn't have been arrested and it's more than a scandal, I also think that maybe using the words mental illness could be, I'm not woke at all. I agree with most of what Montgomery Toms is doing. I'm not woke, but I think that using the terms mental illness, although he should not have been arrested, absolutely not, it is unnecessarily inflammatory and potentially very hurtful and damaging to some trans people. Now, maybe if we could suggest a more empathetic approach. So, this doesn't mean compromising your strength of conviction or your robustness or your assertiveness. It doesn't mean being weaker or more airy-fairy, but maybe just my advice to Montgomery Thomas, maybe try to dialogue with people more rather than antagonizing and potentially hurting. I think a lot of the people, a lot of trans people, I've had trans friends myself, I think a lot of the people at these marches, genuinely in their heads, they think that they're right, they're doing the right thing, the just thing, and that it's okay. So we have to, without being weak or airy-fairy or tiptoeing around, maybe we need to just be more empathetic and dialogue with them more. And some of them will come around to Montgomery Tom's way of thinking. If we can be assertive and strong, but just a bit more diplomatic and a bit more empathetic towards them. Now, Monty mentioned that he was a Christian. I'm a liberal, progressive Christian as well. Quite a sinful Christian, maybe you might say. But he mentioned also that he was prone to arrogance, because I saw a talk, which you can see an extract of on my YouTube channel. I saw a talk of his at the Sounds Beautiful Festival, and he said that he was arrogant. Now, maybe I wouldn't go that far, but he said that arrogance was necessary. Now, I would argue that you can be strong and assertive and effective and achieve great things and be really hard-hitting without being arrogant, and that arrogance is not necessary, and arrogance is incompatible with being a Christian or with Christianity. I'm not saying that we have to be woke or overly soft or tiptoeing around, but I think when we're dialoguing with people, things have become very tribal and very toxic now, one side against the other, and we've got to do something about this. So without being weak or airy-fairy, we need to try and meet people where they're at in their heads, try and empathize with them, and just understand where they're coming from and how they've got that way, because a lot of trans people have suffered hugely, and people that are involved in the trans movement or want to transition, this ideology has brainwashed and manipulated people, and now I find it's becoming increasingly difficult to differentiate between genuine trans people. When I say genuine, I mean people who've really, really suffered and gone through, years of medical procedures. They've really had to go through a lot to get to where they are, and that the surgery obviously doesn't bear thinking about. Um, and they had a genuine medical condition, and now they're living in the body that they need to be on or want to be in. But we've lost the ability now to differentiate between those serious medical cases. I've had trans friends myself, and then people who just want to try it out. It's like a fashion. It's being promoted. They just want to do it. They fancy doing it. It's like a whim. It's almost like we've created a problem when there's none there. We're promoting something when it should be it should be only in extreme medically urgent circumstances where somebody's been through terrible suffering and they've got gender dysphoria. But now we seem to be promoting it, and questioning people's, obviously children's gender, questioning their gender when, we're creating a problem when it's not even there. It's almost like we want people to have gender dysphoria. We want people to be insecure and feel that they're in the wrong body. It's crazy what's going on. So yeah, as Christians or as decent citizens, we should be challenging this very robustly, because it's very dark what's going on. But I disagree with Montgomery or other people like Montgomery using placards with mental illness on, because that's unnecessarily antagonistic and hurtful towards some people who've been through a lot, and people who've been manipulated and programmed, and people who've suffered enormously. That could be very hurtful. And I'm not being woke when I say that. I'm just talking about respect and compassion, which is what Christianity is about. Compassion, but that doesn't mean weakness. Empathy, but not weakness. So trying to meet people where they're at, trying to relate to where people are at in their heads and how they've got to that point in their thinking. Because an awful lot of people at these marches and in this movement who are, really woke, you might say, in their heads, they're right, they're justified, they think it's good, they think it's right, and normal, and a good thing, an honourable thing. And so without sort of trashing them and knocking them down and provoking them, shouldn't we be trying to dialogue with them, finding out where they're at in their thinking, meet them where they're at? Now I'm waffling now, but you get the message. So yeah, Montgomery should not have been arrested. We're just living in surreal times now. It should be about dialogue. We should be dialoguing with each other, talking to each other, trying to understand where we're at, instead of being so tribal and black and white, and they're on their side and we're on our side, entrenched. The police should have dialogued with Montgomery. I know that's maybe not their job description necessarily, but briefly, it's like I was arrested during an anti-lockdown protest. Well, not arrested, but I was surrounded by about 5 or 6 police officers. An anti-lockdown protest during lockdown in Bournemouth in 2021. What an absurd waste of police time and resources. I was really polite to them, but opinionated, but polite and friendly as well. What overkill, what an absurd waste of police time and resources, having 5 police officers surrounding me and escorting me to my bike, because they didn't believe that I would leave the area. They didn't believe that I wanted to leave the area, which I did anyway. I'd been there for a few hours and I was ready to leave, but they didn't believe me. It was harassment, and for what? What's happened to policing? Some of them were nice, but some of them were dreadful. They were mixed personalities. But yeah, well done to Montgomery. Keep up the great work. As I said, I had the pleasure of meeting Montgomery Toms at Sounds Beautiful Festival last weekend near Wimborne. But no, I don't think you don't need to be arrogant to do what you do. And Christianity, or being a Christian is is incompatible with arrogance, and we shouldn't be just sort of using inflammatory language, in my opinion. But yeah, this is my advice from an old man over twice Montgomery's age. I know Montgomery's only 20. I'm 45 now already. But yeah, big shout out to Montgomery Toms. Keep up the great work. But maybe just a few tweaks there, a few ideas. So yeah, more empathetic, more dialogue, more diplomacy, but not airy-fairy or wishy-washy, of course, which we're definitely not, are we?